Welcome, everyone. This is our May CAN meeting to learn about the federal response to public safety. This is our fifth public safety conversation, and we have several more lined up for this summer. We'll be talking to youth, the FOP, and the Latinx experience with public safety. And in September, we'll hear from our state officials. I'm Ann Coffey, the CEO of CMPE and one of the coordinating hosts of CAN. And I want to start by thanking each of you for coming today. And as you know, your presence is helping us stay connected and deepening our understanding of what is happening in our community and learning together. This is an open space, and anyone who is interested in helping our nonprofit sector make greater impact is welcome and invited to join us. As a reminder, we will be recording the program portion of the sessions. The candid group discussion portion will not be recorded. And finally, we ask that everyone stay on mute unless you are asking a question during the Q&A at the end of the program. However, throughout the program, please feel free to put your questions in the chat and your comments in the chat. And like past meetings, we will start with an opening conversation with our guest, then move on to our candid breakouts where you'll have an opportunity to connect with each other and have a deeper conversation about the topic. So we hope you can stay for that portion of the meeting. It's really important. And at this point, it's my pleasure to turn the program over to the extraordinary Anthony Smith, another co-host of CAN and the CEO of Cities United, to introduce our guests and to facilitate the conversation. So Anthony, it's all yours.
Thank you, Ann. Good to see everybody this morning, and thank you all for joining us. This has been an important topic. As you all know, we lost 173 Louisvillians to community violence last year. We had a number of police-involved incidents that we were dealing with. And that we are moving in the same direction this year, what I believe already having a 66 last count, might be at 67, 68, because we did lose someone last night. So public safety in this community is at an all-time high, and we've got to figure out what we're going to do as a city as we move forward, and how Cities United, we're an organization called Cities United. We're helping mayors really reimagine and redefine. And this is the prime time for us to really think that through as a city, as a state, and as a country around what do we really mean when we talk about public safety and how do we invest in it. So it's really exciting to have the Congressman and Dana with us today to talk about all of the stuff that's coming down from the federal level to support this work and think about this work, but also just to hear from them about their experience with public safety. So today we have Congressman John Yarmouth, who I have not seen for a while because of the COVID. I used to run into him in planes, headed to DC in the morning, and it was always like, this cat's running. He's just always by himself, normal guy just going, but he's doing good work. So, Congressman Yarmouth represents the 3rd Congress District in the United States House of Representatives, now in his 8th term. So that's been 16 years he's been representing us and at the federal level, making sure that our voices are heard. He has served as the chairman of the Budget Committee since 2019 and also serves as on the Committee of Education and Labor. Yarmuth has been recognized for his work to improve education, expand accessibility to affordable healthcare, and to revitalize manufacturing in Louisville. Born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky, a graduate of Athens High School and Yale University. He and his wife, Kathy, has one son, Aaron, who is the current owner and editor of the Leo Weekly. So really thank you for being here with us, Congressman. And also joining the Congressman is Dana, as the district director, Dana Mayton. I might be pronouncing it wrong, Dana. We'll get to it. You'll help me correct when I get there. Dana joined the office of Congressman Yarmouth in August of 2020 as the district director. She oversees his Louisville operations, representing the congressman in the district and staying abreast of local concerns and the constituents' needs. Most recently, Dana served as the director of membership services for the Kentucky Association of Highway Contractors for 4 years that I did not know was a thing until I read your bio. And other state agencies. Prior to that, she served as various roles in and around government with the University of Louisville, the Kentucky Revenue Cabinet, and the Legislative Research Commission as the Deputy Attorney General. A native of Arkansas, Dana and her husband, Ray, reside in Shelbyville. They have one son, Turner, and a graduate of the University of Louisville College of Business and resides in Simpsonville. So thank you both for joining us. And as you all have heard, these conversations really are candid and around public safety. And we really do want to just spend time. And we got to also let you all know that the congressman needs to leave at 9:30, but Dana will stay with us and have a conversation with us. So I'm going to start with the congressman and get some questions from him. And I know we've seen you at protests around the murder of Breonna Taylor. We've seen you out with the protesters around Dave McAtee. And, we've still seen no justice for either. So when you think about it, I know that's had an impact on you as you think about your work. So the first question really is, can you just explain to us how you define public safety? What's your public safety agenda? And how has the last year impacted that or changed that, if any at all?
Well, first of all, thank you. Thanks for having me. And thanks for all the work that you do on a daily basis. You are doing the hard stuff. And I don't think that should be left unsaid. And I think also you understand how lucky I am to have Dana Maiden when you heard her background. She brings a wealth of experience in public affairs. And certainly she could do my job just as well as I can do it. When I think of public safety, I think of it in very simple terms, and that is the ability to go about your daily lives without fear of injury or death. That's probably really simplistic, but that's what I think of. And what I've realized in not just over the last year and a half, but over many years is that there's I guess in modern years, most recent years, that there is I think a significant psychological, psychiatric element to public safety that we ignore. And I think we have an atmosphere of separation, hostility, mistrust that probably it didn't start in the political arena, but the political arena has exacerbated it. And I think it has led to kind of an attitude that I don't have responsibilities to my fellow citizens. I don't have to worry about their public safety. And as a matter of fact, if they get in my way, I can violate their public safety. And as all of you who have worked in these fields knows, there are economic, there are sociological, there are so many different influences on someone's propensity to violence that, again, it's simplistic to say that we need a holistic approach to public safety, but clearly we do. And I think that when we've approached these subjects in Washington, yeah, we've got the George Floyd bill that we passed in the House that we're trying to get passed in the Senate. But that is far from a solution to the many problems we have in society, all of which jeopardize our public safety. And, even today, with 50% of the country vaccinated, health is certainly part of the public safety question as well. And if you're willing to jeopardize the health of your neighbor and possibly lead to their permanent disability or death, that's just as serious an element of public safety as is gun violence. And Louisville certainly has a problem, but so does every other big city in the country. I saw some data the other day that just, virtually every major metropolitan area has seen a 35 to 50% increase in violent crimes in their communities. That's LA, Houston, Dallas, Chicago, Washington, you name it. So while we certainly need a localized approach to this, we have to understand that it's not that we're doing anything especially wrong. It's that the country has gone haywire. So that's a long exposition on
No,
my view
that's
of
right on point.
public safety.
No, I think that's right on point, Congressman. And I think because it's so comprehensive and holistic, you've got to walk through all of that. And I think as you and others have, we've relied on certain folks to bring public safety, and it has not really gotten us to where we want. So having a holistic approach to that, I think, is important. When you think about the way your views on public safety, you think about it, how does that influence committees and other things that you decide to sit on? And as you sit on those, how do you bring all of that to the table?
Right. Well, as you mentioned, I'm chairman of the budget committee, have been for the last 2.5 years. And in that role, I have some influence over how we allocate our money at the federal level. Although I basically deal in overall numbers, big numbers, not with individual programs. That's done by the Appropriations Committee. But I do have a seat at the table for those conversations. In my other committee, my first committee in my first term was Education and Labor Committee. And I've always had a passionate interest in education, but also in the lives of our hardworking Americans who have really not made much progress over the last 40 years and who need more attention. And so that's what we try to do every day in those committees. I don't think there's any question that education is one of the major, if not the most important factors in someone's likelihood of having a good lifestyle and happiness. So I'm deeply engaged in that, but also I think, and I see Mary Gwen Wheeler on here, who's spent so much time and energy and passion on these subjects. I think we really have to refocus what our education looks like. I strongly believe that we have to have free and mandatory early childhood education throughout the country, starting at 2.5 or 3 years old. That's what they do in most other developed countries. And we put our kids at a disadvantage when we don't make that available to them. I know some of you have been to the Keystone Academy, and I advise anyone who can to go down, and it's on South 15th Street, 6 or 8 blocks south of St. Stephen's. And it's right in the middle of the housing projects. These are vulnerable kids. They're from lower resourced homes. And what they do, the progress they make, the advances in social skills and verbal skills, it's just absolutely phenomenal. And every child ought to have access to that kind of a developmental program. But so to the extent I can work on that in the Education Committee, I work on that. Getting back really quickly, I think we ought to think of school now, basic elementary, K through 12, as survival skills. I think that's what we're going to need to do. I don't think we should really worry about teaching knowledge. There are too many ways to find whatever you need to know. And besides that, the store of knowledge in the world is so vast, we have no idea. One of the crazy points is that, and I know we're getting a little bit off topic, but this all has to do with the holistic approach to public safety, is that in 2018, they calculated that the store of knowledge in the world doubled every 13 months. But by 2030, it will double every 12 minutes. So if we think, I know it's mind blowing. If we think about school as teaching knowledge, we shouldn't. We need to teach, obviously internet literacy and safety. I mean, clearly that's part of public safety right now is how you interact with social media and with others on social media. financial literacy, civics, things that are going to aren't going to change. The survival skills won't. Well, some of them will change because there'll be new technologies and so forth that you have to figure out how to use. Artificial intelligence, I think, is going to be one of the greatest challenges we have in terms of how we react to each other and to the world. But so all of those things fascinate me, and you know, the world is changing so rapidly that we've got to have an education system that responds to that speed of change. And I tell all students when I speak to them, and I've been to over 200 schools, more than 200 schools over the last 15 years. And I teach the kids one thing: the most important skill you're going to have in your life is adaptability. It's how to adapt to change. And if you don't, you get frustrated. If you're disconnected, you get frustrated, you get mad, you hate the world, and you're much more prone to violent acts.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And again, this whole ideal of holistic, I think I appreciate you keep bringing that back. I see Dr. Eddie Woods on, who is a part of No More Red Dots. I don't know if you know that work and the team, that the work that they do there. They do the interruption work. Right. And when you see the administration being real clear with the ARP dollars that can be used to support this work, how are you encouraging local leaders and other folks to take advantage of these opportunities that we have right now?
I don't think I have to. I don't think I have to encourage them. I know Greg is and the Metro Council are thrilled to have the $400+ million that they got out of the American Rescue Plan, and JCPS is thrilled to have the $400 million that they got, and Kentucky is glad to have the $2 billion that they got with very few restrictions.
Right.
And you know that's the most important thing, I think. In with the state and local, or the local funding, you can't use it for roads and bridges, and you can't use it for to cut taxes, to offset a tax cut. But you can use it for virtually anything else. And you know, I think you know, for once, Andy Beshear and the General Assembly came to an agreement on something, and they figured out how to use half the money. But there's a lot of money for the kind of activities that you all are engaged in. And so, you know, I don't tell Greg and the Metro Council how to make those decisions, or Andy, but again, I know they're enthusiastic about the possibilities that those extra dollars bring.
Yeah, and I appreciate the idea that, you know, I think that, you know, when you think about the work, and again, this is just as you see it, what does Louisville need to be doing to get ahead of these numbers, to reduce these numbers, to create more peace in the community, to start working in better partnership, to really reimagine public safety? What are we missing, and what should we be doing?
I'm going to really disappoint you, Anthony. I don't have any idea. I do have ideas, but it's not my field of expertise. You all know more about that than I do. And you know, I've talked to Erica Shields. I believe she is well positioned to make changes in the police department. It's going to take a while. They're not going to happen overnight. Clearly, we have to do a better job of screening recruits for the police department. Mm-hmm. Training's one thing, but I think we got to do a much better job of essentially vetting the people we bring into those jobs. I know it's hard to recruit people into the police force right now, but you know, Brett Hankinson was on the Lexington Police Department and had a do not hire on his when he left, mm-hmm. and somehow LMPD missed that. That shouldn't happen. That's one of the things that the George Floyd Act is going to try to do, to have some kind of a national, I forget what you call it. Well, a national
registry.
Registry, yeah, yep. Registry of. Thank you. So, in terms of policing, that's what I think we'll do. I certainly agree with those who say that there are a lot of things that police are now asked to do that they shouldn't be doing. A lot of social services work that social service experts should be called on to do. So again, I rely on the experts, and unfortunately, we still have to deal with the internal defense mechanisms of the police department, and we've got to figure out how to convince officers that the best thing for them is to hold each other accountable when there's misconduct, and we don't have that. We don't have it anywhere. I don't think. I'm not aware. We certainly don't have it in Minneapolis. We don't have it in virtually any city. We still have that self-defense syndrome that we have to deal with.
Yeah, no, that's it. Last question before we let you go. Just really around the protests and the demand for new models and new stuff. So you were out, you've been on the line and stuff like that. How has the protests and the demand for justice for Breonna Taylor, Dave McAtee, George Floyd, I can go on and on with the names. How has that shifted you over the last year to 16 months? And yeah, just how has that shifted you?
Well, it's encouraged me in the sense that the protests were very broad-based. They were very diverse. I remember going to a march that started in Tyler Park, and the crowd was majority white. And when one of the speakers asked how many were there for the first time at a protest, probably a third of the hands went up, maybe even a little more than that. So that was an indication to me that the protest movement, but more importantly, the concern about it, the community concern was community-wide and was not just the usual suspects. And that's promising because it has to be contagious, and we want it to be contagious.
Yeah, thank you. Anything you need us to know? How can we be helpful as you do your work on the Hill? What should we be paying attention to? What can we do to be helpful?
I always tell people this, that if you have your choice of worrying about what happens on Capitol Hill and worrying about what happens in Metro Hall and Frankfurt, pay attention to Metro Hall and Frankfurt, because those are the things that are going to affect your daily lives much more regularly than what happens in Washington. Washington's, even though we were able to pass the American Rescue Plan, it's still a very frustrating place to be right now. And we've got people like Mitch McConnell who don't think of any issue in terms of what's the best policy for the country. It's all about electoral politics. And there are too many people in Washington who think that way. Whatever the issue is, it's how do I get an electoral advantage over the other side? It's not what's the best policy for the country. And fortunately, we have a lot of people who are more, maybe it's unfortunate, we have a lot of people who are more interested in policy than in politics, which is why we probably don't do as well as we should, because every poll shows the vast majority of the American people agrees with Democratic policies on almost every level, on almost every subject. And we still have a 50-50, basically 50-50 divide in Congress. So again, making my life easier would be being more effective at the state and local level, because what we're seeing in Frankfurt now is almost criminal how pathetic this Republican majority is in Frankfurt. I mean, all they want to do is worry about abortion and things that affect very, very few people, while hundreds of thousands of people have very serious needs in this Commonwealth that Frankfurt should be dealing with and paying attention to. So
focus on the local and the state.
Focus on the local and the state.
I appreciate that. There was other questions in the chat box, but I think I can answer some of them around some of the federal action around gun safety. I know the president and the vice president has been very busy doing executive orders and signing a lot of stuff. So I'll put those in the chat box for folks.
Yeah, this, for those of you who don't know, this F is my National Rifle Association rating, my voting record. I get an F. I wear it proudly. I have for almost 3 years now. And, you know, that's one of these crazy things where 90% of the American people feel we ought to have universal background checks, and we can't even get that passed through the Senate. And so hopefully Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema will see the light, do away with the filibuster, and we can pass a lot of things that will really help the country. If we don't, I really fear for our democracy.
Yeah. Well, we thank you for your time today. We thank you for your service and your leadership, Congressman. And again, welcome back anytime. As Ann said, our goal is to take all of this and kind of come up with a document from it that we'll get out. But we really do appreciate your time and effort, and wear your F proudly. It's probably the only one you ever got, so we appreciate you.
Right, and once again, thanks for all you do. You all are doing really, really critical, hard work, and I certainly appreciate that, and I know many, many people do.
Thank you. All right.
So thanks.
Yeah. All right. For the rest of your day.
Yeah, you too.
All right.
Take care.
Take care. I'm gonna bring Dana in. Hey, Dana. Good to have you. Thanks for being with us. You've been with the Congressman since 2020, August 2020.
Right.
So we're gonna do a little bit of just your personal take on public safety, where you are with it, what you think about it. But then also however folks can get it with you if they have questions as you do the district work.
Sure.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And I'll be sure to drop my contact information in the chat box. And obviously you all, Ann knows where to find me. So yeah, first of all, I just want to say, as I look at all the faces on this call, some of them I know, some of them I'm just getting to know, and some that I look forward to working with. I'm so happy to be back in the Louisville community. Like the congressman said, Frankfort has just become so toxic, and slogging away in that environment can just really take a toll on you. So I was really excited to get back to Frankfort, and obviously excited about the congressman's agenda. I'm really focused, and he kind of touched on this as well. One of my things, and I have a lot of background volunteering with nonprofits, and finding that sweet spot of the intersection of policy and politics, because I think a lot of times those of us that are working so hard on good policy think that you can never get it done because of the politics. And I think the congressman is sort of a master at finding a way to make the politics work to get good policy. And it's one of those, you're not always going to get everything you want, but he's done such a great job of chipping away, especially through the American Rescue Plan, to bring back funds to our community to focus on things that are so important to all of you all. And I think your all's work is so important to sort of fill that gap. As we all know, government can't do everything. We can provide some resources to help you all do what you do, but what you all are doing in the community is really some of the more important work. So, you're taking care of constituencies, especially with what our community's been through in the past year. And I hate to sort of lump the pandemic and the racial disparities all into one, but as we've seen, they do feed each other. And the way that your all's groups have just stepped up, turned on a dime, figured out how to, get people tested, get people food, help people with housing. It has just really been so rewarding to see, what our community can do coming together. And as far as the public safety issues, I think the congressman, did a great job defining that as, it's not overly simplistic. Everybody, whether it's me, my child, or your child, should be able to go about their daily business without being afraid that, if I get pulled over for a speeding ticket, that it's going to have a horrible, possibly final result for me. So I was one of those people at that march at the park that the congressman's talking about, that, I've been at a lot of rallies and activist sort of things, but I'd never been to a march like that. And so just being able to see people that look like me from my background caring just as much about this issue as the people who are more directly affected. So again, that's something that I really look forward to as I can start to get back out in the community. I started a job in August where one of my main parts of my job description is community engagement. And then my only way to engage is on calls like this. So, you know, I would welcome invitations from your all's various entities to come, you know, meet your folks, tour your facilities, hear more about what you're doing individually, because I think there are a lot of synergies between what we do in our office with casework that a lot of people aren't even aware of. You know, we help people with immigration issues as far as inquiries if they're not hearing back from the federal government on, you know, Edgardo's shaking his head there. He knows that very well. I have caseworkers that are fluent in Spanish and other languages that can be very helpful to your constituents if they're having an issue with the federal government. We liaison with the IRS when people aren't getting their things processed. The poor IRS has just been in horrible shape getting people's things processed, people not getting their stimulus payments. Even though unemployment insurance is a state issue, we have played a big role in pushing the state to help various individuals get their things resolved with unemployment insurance. So again, you can just call our office. We'll get you referred to the right person. You know, give our number to your constituents so that we can do that. We've all been teleworking, but we are about to go back into the office on a hybrid schedule. Won't be open to the public for walk-ins probably for a few more months. But even though all our calls go to voicemail right now, we make every effort to call people back the same day. So I've been really impressed that the staff, and I wasn't the one who had to implement everything when they all went home. So I know that wasn't easy when they started, but I think that we've done a great job continuing to serve our constituency even while everyone's been remote.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I got a quick question for you. Going back to the march that you attended and the congressman talking about a third of the people that was their first one. And this is just a personal reflection and conversation. What do you think made more white folks come out for this now? Right? This has been an issue that we've been dealing with for a while in Louisville and across the country. What made this so different and why are folks now coming out?
I think it became so personal for our community with what happened with Breonna Taylor. And I think people who maybe in the past are passive supporters or passive allies finally said, okay, enough is enough. We got to do something about this. And we can't expect the victims of this treatment to be the ones to fix it. We have to get in there and help because this is an issue for our whole community, not just a segment of the community. And I guess that's more my personal view of what has pushed me to become more personally involved on my own time.
Do you think that momentum is going to be long-standing, or do you think it'll wane and we'll go back as the world open back up? Do you think we'll go back to normal, or are we at a place where we're really at a tipping point and change is here?
I'm a forever optimist, and I certainly hope that it continues and grows as people can be out and more active. I mean, just to be perfectly honest, the congressman and I were both exposed to COVID the day that we were at that protest. And we both went and, you know, our whole crew went and got tested. Everybody was fine. We had followed all the rules. Everybody was masked. But I will tell you, that is one of the few public events when all the restrictions were in place that he and I and other members of our staff all attended because it meant that much to all of us.
Thank you. We're going to transition into what we call candid conversations. And if folks, there's probably going to be some more questions in the chat box for you and the Congressman, Dana, that we'll make sure we get over, and then we'll try to get those answered throughout the conversation if we can. But if not, we'll just send them to you all and hopefully get answers back. One of the things I want to make sure people heard from the Congressman is that the American Rescue Plan Act dollars that are coming are able to be used for multiple things. So we want to make clear that if we're advocating for those dollars to go to the right things, we heard there's a bucket of money that's going to the city and to JCPS. We want to make sure that, again, to make sure that those dollars are being used in a way that can really help us. One of the things that the president has been clear about is that they want cities and officials to use those around community violence interruption strategies and models, because we are at a crisis. We cannot continue to act like we're not at a public health crisis when it comes to community violence. Way too many of our kids are dying every day in our streets. And we as a country need to do something different. And we have an opportunity now to fund the work that we know can save lives, build out an infrastructure, use these resources wisely so that we can keep our kids alive. I can't say it any clearer, and I'm going to continue to beat that drum beat. We had Monique Williams and her team on the call when we first did a call in January. She runs the Office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods. You all know I did that when it first opened. The budget when I was there was $102,000. It felt like $102. That's what it felt like. So let me clear it up. $102,000. The current budget sits at about 1.5. They're asking for 4.5 to do their work. And council always has questions about why. Why should we do this? Why does it matter? And we have not done it yet, and we see why it matters. We've seen people across the country support work like Dr. Wood, support like Ms. Deborah, who was on the call with the folks over at, what's the name of the spot? Pivot to Peace. There's work that matters that folks know how to save lives that we as a city has just never supported. We've been asking for peanuts and have never just got shells. So now there's the time. So they need support. Monique probably couldn't join today, but I'm going to advocate for them. And we need to call council and say we want to support this work. We also need to call the mayor and council and say we want money and support from the American Rescue dollars to support our work and their work. So I just want to advocate for that before we go into the candid conversations. So I'm gonna turn it over to Ashley to walk us through and get us prepared for the candid conversations, and then we'll come back and have more dialogue with each other from those.
Okay, can you all hear me okay? Okay. So thank you, Anthony, for that. And I just like to echo what Anthony mentioned about the American Rescue Plan dollars. I'm no longer with the city. I've transitioned to James Graham Brown Foundation, but have been watching the American Rescue Plan dollars kind of roll out. And so I agree, like we need to spend a lot of time paying attention to how those dollars flow out and reach out to the city to make sure that, you know, we understand what the thinking is behind a potential investment strategy there. And that outreach needs to happen now because those discussions and thinkings are happening now. So I also urge this group to pay close attention to that funding coming from JCPS and the state around those areas. I do, before we go into the candid discussions, Mackenzie Longoria did put a long but very important point in the chat, just talking about public safety as it relates to seniors and behavioral health, and I think it's an outstanding point. I don't know if Mackenzie, if you want to speak to that briefly, but that may be something we want to include in the candid discussions. Mackenzie, do you want to add any more context to that or thoughts?
Hey, I'm sorry, I had my camera off. I'm kind of multitasking. I'm leaving for Pittsburgh this morning to visit my family. So I'm packing, getting the car ready, but I did want to tune into this before I left. And again, and I know this, you know, largely a conversation on public safety and all of the pressing issues that come along with that. But in my role as public policy director for the Alzheimer's Association, you know, these are issues we're also seeing more and more. I think the other side of the spectrum. I think a lot when we're talking about public safety, we're thinking about children and youth and at-risk adults. And the problem is, you know, when we don't address those public safety issues on the younger side of the spectrum, those issues will then continue to permeate into society, into our senior years and impact how we age and our quality of life and how we're treated as seniors, I think especially in minority and underserved communities. I don't really have an answer for this or something I'm trying to figure out, I guess, in my role, in my current position. So it's not necessarily an answer that I have or a specific question, but I guess more of a probing thought about, how do we deal with law enforcement and first responders and this concept of public safety, looking at the other side of the spectrum, looking at our seniors, especially for me, seniors with Alzheimer's and dementia, and specifically, Black Americans and Latinx Americans are, much more likely to develop the disease than Caucasian Americans. So there seems like this confluence of issues too, where a certain segment of the population is more likely to develop a disease that puts them at an even greater risk for bad interactions with law enforcement, on top of the fact that there have probably already been bad interactions with law enforcement and with public safety in the past. So there's just a lot of smart and really involved and exciting people on this call. I just couldn't help myself but pose that in the chat, and thank you for bringing that up.
Well, I thank you for sharing it. I just think I agree that, as the congressman said, we need to look at this issue and many other issues in a holistic way. And, thinking about, who is impacted, making sure we're being as inclusive as possible. And this is a group that we don't talk about enough, who are impacted directly by violence that we're seeing across the nation. So we can pull that into our discussions as well. So we're now going to move into our candid discussions. And so this is our opportunity for reflections of, what we heard from Congressman Yarmouth. What are some of the questions that you have? What would you like to know? How can Louisville nonprofits engage with the federal governments in general, and then with Congressman Yarmouth's office specifically to increase public safety? He did call out that, because we're having funds flowing through the state and local government, that this is an opportunity for us to really pay attention there. So, do we need to think about collectively with this group, what does that mean for our outreach to, the city and the state around public safety? And at the conclusion of the breakouts, we'll share, what has resonated with the group. And I just want to say that remember that the candid sessions have a dual purpose. One is to make sure that we're building and strengthening relationships. And it's an opportunity for us to learn and generate ideas with a bias towards action. So be sure to make sure everybody in your group is able to share their perspective. And then we'll come back and share more broadly those reflections with the group. So we have about 20 minutes. So let's move into our candid discussions.